fight hard for respect at work and online, we couldn't wish for a stronger champion. So thank you, Mary. Well, what a year we've had. An election result that shook the Conservative Party to its core, a Labour Party on the ascendancy, and strong public support for our call for a new deal at work. But first, I want to say a word about our brilliant emergency service workers too, because sadly this year there has been cause to show that they really are the best of us. Our sympathy and our solidarity goes to the family and friends of those lost and injured at Grenfell, Westminster, London Bridge, Finsbury Park, and at a concert hall full of young music lovers in Manchester too. And our pride and our thanks goes out to those who helped. The first responders, paramedics and emergency control staff, our medics, nurses and hospital support staff, police and community support officers, and never forget our local government and security staff who have to pick up the pieces when politicians fail. And let's not forget either our heroic firefighters, returning to that Grenfell blaze again and again, putting their lives on the line to save others. They are the best of Britain, and on behalf of the whole trade union movement, let's say thank you to them. Now, when I last stood in front of you here, the EU referendum result was just 3 months old. 1 year later, the government still hasn't come up with a proper plan. Like children who haven't done their homework, turning up to school on a Monday morning, let's hear them, Fox, Davis, Johnson, Gove, the Cabinet's answer to Grange Hill. Playing up because they've got a supply teacher. Pretending they're paying attention, we've all been there, pretending they're paying attention while messing about at the back of the class. Yes, the clock is ticking on Brexit, all right, but the government still hasn't published any assessment of what it means for our industries, still no action plan to protect jobs, and still no realistic negotiating strategy. In fact, from what I hear, there's been plenty of offensive but precious little charm. Back home, the Prime Minister says that she will go on and on and on. And she is sticking to that same old script that she can get whatever she wants. She can get the exact same benefits of the single market without playing by any of the rules. That isn't a negotiating strategy. That's a letter to Santa. Unions live in the real world. We say, whichever way people voted in the referendum, what we need now is a Brexit that puts jobs, rights and livelihoods first. And the best way to do that is with a proper deal with the EU, calmly thought through, sensibly negotiated. We support a transition period, not out of principle, but out of sheer pragmatism. And during that time, Britain should play by the rules. It's common sense. The government's hardly begun to sort out the divorce, so there's no chance they're going to sort out brand new terms just for the transition arrangement in just 18 months. The advantage is this. Lorries aren't sat in Dover our nuclear sites are safe, the workers' rights, which unions fought for, hold good. More certainty for investment and a breathing space to negotiate the best possible long-term deal for the whole of the UK. Now, our movement has some tests of our own for that future deal. It must guarantee the rights of EU nationals who've made the UK their home and those of Britons abroad too. It must protect the Good Friday Agreement. It must guarantee a level playing field for workers' rights now and index-linked into the future. Minimum labour standards, which Britain is sovereign and free, of course, to build and improve on. And it must deliver barrier-free, tariff-free trade and investment, because that protects good, skilled, export-linked jobs that produce the wealth that fund our public services. And while I'm about it, here's another test, Mr. Fox. No dodgy backdoor trade deals to sell off our NHS. Including with a USA president who seems to think that local protesters are just as bad as the neo-fascists marauding through their town. Congress, let there be no mistake. The trade union movement here in the UK stands with our US brothers and sisters in saying we condemn those anti-Semitic, women-hating, white supremacist thugs. And if President Trump sets a foot on our soil, the TUC will be proud to lead a peaceful protest. Let's send a message. Donald Trump, you are not welcome here. So the TUC and unions, we've set out our clear tests for Brexit. That's the shape of the best Brexit deal. That's the Brexit deal that working people need. Staying in the single market and customs union would deliver it, but if there's a better way to deliver the deal, then we're listening. Now, some have said that single market membership means accepting unfettered freedom of movement. To them, I say this. Other members of the single market have different ways to manage migration fairly, like guaranteeing local people good jobs, like making bosses respect the rate for the job and union agreements, like raising the minimum wage and stamping out exploitation. So why doesn't the UK government choose that? And let me say this, I feel this strongly. We must never, ever fall into the trap of scapegoating migrant workers. Migrants aren't the cause of low pay. Just like millions of other people born and raised in the UK, they are the victims of low pay. And the shocking fact is that only 1 in 9 workers in Britain got a real pay rise last year, while top bosses are still raking it in. And let me say this as well. Because if ministers really care about pressures on schools and hospitals, then there's a simple solution to that. Stop austerity and stop the cuts. So I challenge all political parties, when it comes to Brexit, don't box yourself in, don't rule anything out, keep all options on the table and put jobs, rights and livelihoods first. Now tonight, MPs are debating the EU Withdrawal Bill, and it's a chance to hold the government to account. Will the government guarantee to protect and enhance workers' rights? Rights won by unions joining together across borders and over generations? I can't see it in the bill today. And that means that if the bill becomes law unamended, the government can declare open season. Our rights open to attack at a stroke by this government or any future government. Now, I know some people say that won't happen. Even if it's not in the bill, the Prime Minister has said on the record that she would protect rights. But remember, this is the same PM who said she would crack down on 0 hours, put workers on boards and tackle greed at the top. And she hasn't kept a single promise. And she's got a Brexit secretary. He doesn't care about health and safety. We heard his response to the risk of workers' hearing being damaged by Big Ben's 120 decibel bell. He said, just get on with it. So we don't trust them. We put workers first. And we don't want the deregulated tax haven that the government has threatened if it doesn't get its way. Now, instead of presenting us with some kind of Christmas list, the government should be honest about what's at stake, practical about what's achievable, and recognise that the EU referendum bitterly divided this country. And it should be the government's job to show some leadership and bring the country back together, not rub salt in the wound. But in truth, the Prime Minister's top priority isn't to defend Britain's best interests. The Prime Minister's top priority is to stop the Conservative Party falling apart. That's why the rest of us have to step up to the plate, because our top priority is to fight for what's best for workers. It's not easy, but we have to make the case that there is a better way, and we have to stop this government's kamikaze Brexit. Delegates, whatever happens, we still have work to do. Building towards the fair and equal society that we all seek, organising for the world that we want to live in. In this movement, we're proud to be working people. We know there's no such thing as an unskilled job. Every job and every worker deserves respect and dignity. Just this year, as we've heard, we saw the power of unions to challenge injustice. When the last government brought in those charges for employment tribunals, faced with a fee of over £1,000, claims fell off a cliff. Not because bosses suddenly stopped behaving badly, but because workers were priced out of justice. And we all know what happened next. One of our unions picked up the cudgels, fought this government all the way to the Supreme Court, and delegates, they won. On behalf of our movement and for all workers who now have a chance of justice, thank you, Unison. Now, as the world of work changes, we've seen the same old exploitation wearing new clothes. Tech giants, more powerful than nation states, unleashing disruption across the globe with no care for the human consequences. We've heard it from the GMB, Amazon, forcing shop floor staff to trek up to 14 miles a day. Apple, sweating workers in China. Uber, screwing drivers it pretends not to employ. And not one of those companies, delegates, paying their fair share of taxes. But as someone once said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And only stronger unions can invent the New Deal at work that Britain so badly needs. Just this month, we've cheered on the brilliant McDonald's workers in the Bakers' Union. Out on strike for the basic dignity of fair pay, guaranteed hours, and recognition of their union. Brave young workers with the courage to win. Proof that while we welcome Labour's pledge of repeal, that anti-democratic, anti-trade union act won't stop us fighting back. In fact, to coin a phrase, muck strike, we're loving it. So let's hear it for the bakers, let's hear it for Ronnie, let's hear it for all those young workers who deserve our support. But it matters because of this. Every time we expose another bad boss and organise, that's more workers that know unions are on their side, more decent employers who won't get undercut by the bad, and more pressure on the government to change the law. Now, we call the deal that we want to see, we call it our Great Jobs Agenda. For a voice at work, for fair and decent pay, for guaranteed hours, the chance to learn and get on in life, fair treatment and respect, and a safe place to work. Fair and reasonable demands, you may think, but nowhere near the reality for many. For workers who still wait by the phone, hoping for work, just as dockers once waited on the quayside. No regular hours means scrambling to pay the rent and pay the bills. And the boss doesn't even need to go to the bother of sacking you. He can just deactivate you by app. Precious little dignity, precious little control. Treated as throwaway workers with throwaway rights. But I say this to bad bosses. You've seen what this union movement has done in the last few years, exposing your nasty little schemes to avoid paying the minimum wage, holiday pay, sick pay, let alone overtime pay. Our eyes are on you. Trade unionists are standing by your gates, talking to your workers, organising. And either you come and sit at the bargaining table with us, or we will see you in court and on the front pages. Change is coming indeed. Because this union movement, the working people of Britain, won't stand for it any longer. We're taking back control of our working lives. And this year, we're taking the Great Jobs Agenda to every MP, every council leader, every mayor, every business, and we are asking them to sign up for Great Jobs, because the Great Jobs Agenda unites us all. Take it into your workplace and use it to bargain and recruit. Take it to shopping centres and leisure centres, wherever working people gather. Show what unions can do. And what better place to start than the campaign for our dedicated public servants. A firefighter today earns £2,000 less in real terms than they did in 2010. A midwife's pay has been cut in real terms by £3,000. A prison officer, too often a dangerous job, denied the right to strike, their pay cut by nearly 4. And all the while, the pound in your pocket buying less. Now, the Prime Minister has spoken. She talked about the sacrifice that public service workers have made, as if they had a choice. Public servants weren't given a say in the matter. They've had 7 years of pay freezes and pay cuts imposed on them. They've been forced to work harder for less, while this government has lined the pockets of corporate Britain with tax giveaway after tax giveaway. So much for a country that works for everyone. Now, on October the 17th, we will rally in Parliament Square and we will send a message to Mrs. May. 5 million hard-working public servants need it. The public backs it. Now just tell the Treasury to get on with it. No cherry-picking. All public servants deserve a pay rise, and they deserve it now. I want to end with this. All of us stand on a platform that the pioneers of trade unionism built for us. And this coming Congress year will be our 150th as a TUC. Now imagine if our founders were stood here now. I think they'd be proud of us, but I doubt they'd be content. And I'm sure they would ask, what are you doing to make sure that the movement is fit to face the next 150 years? Because you see, our founders, they were the true innovators. They were people who dared to stir it up and make waves. They shattered the conventional wisdom, and they built a movement that shaped 2 centuries. They lived through 1 industrial revolution. Our movement lasted 2 more. Now we stand on the cusp of a 4th. Some call it the robot age, when artificial intelligence will lead the way, making some jobs obsolete, yes, but transforming millions more. And workers are going to need new skills on a scale never seen before. So unions have to change because capitalism changes, because business models change, and because working lives change too. We can reinvent a trade unionism that works for the digital age. And that means that we've got to pledge to become, once again, a movement of as well as for young people. The staff who serve your coffee, clean your hotel room, deliver your parcels, and look after your gran. The young mums and dads punished with 0 hours contracts and shift patterns that make planning and paying for childcare nigh impossible. They need unions, but most aren't in them. Not because they don't share our values, but because too often we seem a little too 20th century, maybe, too distant from their lives. So we've spent the last 12 months stepping into the lives of younger workers to find out what kind of trade unionism would really work for them. And in our 150th year, we want to try something new, built from scratch, co-created with today's 20-somethings. New ways to organise, new ways to network, new ways to win, so that we become a movement for everyone once more. You see, I believe that we are the custodians, if you like, of this movement. For our working lives, it's in our care, before we then pass that baton on. And for me, to be a trade unionist is to remember, as the great Scottish Miners' Union Mick McGahey once said, "We are a movement, not a monument." So while we celebrate our past, let's get to it. Let's fight for our future. Let's stay true to our values, but find the courage to change, to grow, to build, and to win. Thank you very much, delegates. Thank you.
You know, before she gave the speech, Frances said, "It's a bit boring this year. Never were you more mistaken." It was a fantastic speech, Frances.